Good to be with you today at the Margaret Thatcher Conference on Trade. Margaret Thatcher does not come across as a person racked with self-doubt when thinking about an appropriate global trade policy. She expressed her views cogently in a speech on March 3rd, 1994. It was a time when the world trading system stood between the era of the GATT and the promise of a new World Trade Organization, the WTO. She was absolutely clear-eyed on the achievements of the former and the promise of the latter. Of course, she would talk of history, of Britain's choice to open its market with the repeal of the Corn Laws. She did not think that Robert Cobden got it wrong to open the British market for food. She did not think that Churchill and Roosevelt got it wrong when in the summer of 1941 at Argentia Bay, they said as a cornerstone of their war aims that the post-war global economy should be characterized by equal access to markets and to raw materials for all, a policy designed to underwrite a more durable peace. She understood the need for strong leadership, praising Arthur Dunkel and Peter Sutherland, the two individuals who had the vision and strength to bring the last great round of multilateral trade negotiations to a successful conclusion, which resulted in the creation of the WTO. She was absolutely clear that trade was what ordinary people wanted to do to better their lives, that it was not some artificial construct of experts. She did not see open markets as something solely of value to the world's largest economies. She saw it as a path forward for prosperity for small and large countries alike. She was focused on the success at that time of the economies that were known as Asian tigers, places like Hong Kong, Korea, and what was known to her at that time as Taiwan, each growing rapidly during the last third of the last century. She did not shrink from attacking rigidly centrally controlled economies that chose to have the state substitute its judgment for the market. She saw the need for curbing subsidies, for bringing services, intellectual property protection, and agriculture fully into the rules-based global trading system. She worried that preferential trading arrangements could well undermine the global system of non-discrimination and equal participation in trade. Margaret Thatcher gave these assessments over a quarter of a century ago, but they're just as fresh now as they were then. They have stood the test of time. We now have just over a quarter century of experience with the WTO, and the world's leaders have called for a reform of that organization. There's a need to be able to restore the negotiating function to the WTO as it was envisaged by its founders. There's a need to have, again, a dispute settlement system that is binding and recognized as legitimate by all. There is a need to have an institution with a strong executive to achieve full transparency with respect to national trade measures that affect trade, to make proposals, to break impasses in negotiations, and to help plan for the future, to meet global challenges such as pandemics and climate change. As Brexit was occurring, I had the privilege of being called upon to give my views on the proper role of an independent Britain in the world trading system. I testified before the International Trade Select Committee of the House of Commons. I met with officials of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and at number 10 Downing Street. There was a reasonable concern then that the views of Britain might not count for much, given the much larger shares of world trade represented by the European Union, the United States, and China. What I said to the people I met with is that when I first attended GATT meetings in the early 1970s, I heard that independent, strong, and articulate voice of the United Kingdom. And while that voice had been of value in Brussels for the last 40 years, I very much welcomed its return to the deliberations on global trade now at the WTO. The world trading system that we benefit from is very much a heritage of the partnership of the United States and Great Britain, based on the same vision that Margaret Thatcher enunciated in her 1994 speech. That system is today fostered by WTO members, including prominently Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Singapore, to name a few, each of which is a disciple of the Britain that fostered open markets. They believe in the precepts enunciated by Margaret Thatcher with respect to the benefits that the world trading system can provide and has so demonstrably provided. It should be seen as no accident that the United Kingdom has now applied to rejoin several of its Commonwealth countries and others in the CPTPP. This arrangement should be seen as a building block towards improvement of the multilateral trading system and as a further guarantee of opening of markets, and not as a means to replace the global trading system with a preferential arrangement. With the withdrawal of the United States from the forward-looking agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the inclusion in the CPTPP of the United Kingdom will contribute additional strength to what has been a regional agreement, had been and has been a regional agreement now, and it'll be a proto-global one. I was asked what Britain can contribute to the WTO. It can contribute to solutions to the major challenges the trading system faces today. Britain has just been host in COP26 to the world's largest gathering of countries concerned with the future of this planet in this era of global warming. In many respects, there is a vitally important trade component to the climate challenge. Carbon border adjustment mechanisms, CBAM, need to be deployed only within agreed international rules, or serious trade conflicts will erupt. The WTO is the only appropriate global venue for that effort. Sustainable development must be addressed as part of the solution to the challenge of climate change. The WTO has a global membership in which that task can and must be accomplished. Britain has much experience relevant to addressing the issues involved in the reform of the WTO. These are constitutional questions. By far the greatest challenge is to restore the deliberative and legislative functions of the organization. As having one of the oldest, if not the oldest, representative parliamentary bodies in the world, Britain is familiar with the frustrations of building consensus and the skills needed to achieve results. That experience can be very useful in finding a way forward to create anew the ability of the trading system to meet new challenges through producing new trade agreements. The second challenge is to make sure that the chief distinguishing feature of the world's trade institution is once again the enforceability of rules to which all have agreed. Britain has fresh experience with the delicate balance of national sovereignty with the judicial system outside of its national boundaries. Finding a solution for dispute settlement is an extraordinarily difficult task, but it's a very necessary one, as WTO members must again be able to rely fully on the enforceability of the WTO's rules. The third element of reform is the creation of a strong executive with an independent voice to bring about solutions, to provide full transparency with respect to national measures that affect trade, and to aid in the enforcement of rules. Britain has long experience with the evolution of executive powers with a sovereign parliament, as well as having created a body of corporate governance law that can inform the task of building an institutional structure to better serve world trade. I conclude that Britain, acting within the construct of Margaret Thatcher's clear vision of a world trading system that she knew, without doubt, would best serve the world's peoples, can and should exercise a global leadership role. Working with those WTO members who are like-minded, Britain should make improvement of the multilateral trading system a reality. It can do so, and I hope it will. Thank you very much.